Hello and welcome to my shop. My name is George and I'm coming to you from the wintry hills of Chelsea, Quebec. Today I'm going to show you a good, fast, cheap way of gluing together small and medium-sized panels without using clamps. To use instead clamping cauls. Now, I'm the last person to say that it's possible for a woodworker to have too many clamps. I mean, it's just true. You cannot have too many clamps. And while you're building your clamp collection, you can get a lot of mileage out of clamping cauls with or without a flat reference plate. And you can put these things together for under the cost of just one clamp. So let me say a little bit more about these. So after having done some milling, I'm left with this half round bottom chunk of material. I cut off about a foot of it, chopped off the sides on the bandsaw, brought the remainder to the jointer, flattened the bottom, and then took the rest to the table saw and sliced it, or actually ripped it, into sections. So I've got 8 sections over here, and I looked at them to see how book matching would come out. So here's a pair here and another pair here, and they look pretty nice. So this is the material that I'm going to work with. So the next step will be to trim off the live edges to have parallel edges. So in the end I decided on this, book matched in the center, and then working out from the center, pairs arranged so that the edges seem to match well, as best they can. It's not perfect. Now I ended up not using this pair because I don't need the width. This is going to be the base for a camera display case. It's a little bit oversized right now, more than I need. So I'll tell you a little bit about the clamping cauls. Straight pieces of hardwood, in this case it's ash, 18 inches long, 1 1/4 inches in depth, and about 1 inch in width. Those dimensions are nominal. They're actually a bit shy of those precise values. Holes at 1.5 inch spacing until I get to about a little bit more than halfway. If I need to clamp up something long or short, I can position the bolt where I need it. And if I have a panel that's very narrow, well, I can just use 2 bolts on this end. So I don't need to make holes all the way through. The holes should be just large enough to accommodate 1/4 inch material. So 17/64 or maybe 9/32. That would give you the slop that you need to quickly put this thing together. That would be just fine. I had this really good idea for why I needed to recess large holes like this, and that was one of my really good ideas that turned out to be something else. So ignore the large diameter countersinks and just go with 1/4 inch through holes right the way through. So I have the panel here now. There's no glue just yet. I'm still just demonstrating. So here's the panel. Imagine there's glue between the pieces, sitting on a couple of rails of scrap, and the clamping cauls would fit over the thing like this. And then you could gently snug it up by turning the nuts. And as you start to snug it up, you could bring in a couple of wedges, tap them in, and then tighten a little bit more, tap a little bit more, tighten a bit more, tap a little more, till it's done. Okay, I'm going to prepare the edges for gluing. So I'm going to fold the joints outbound like this, register them against each other so that they're level with each other, clamp them together, and then plane them so that they're flush with each other and of course straight. So that's one pair. So for the next pair, I'll bring these two together, hold them against each other, clamp them together, and hand plane them as well. And I'll just move through every one of the joints, well, until they're done. The Cauls have a couple of coats of shellac and a coat of paste wax, so that should keep the glue from sticking to them. And the wedges have some coats of hard wax on them as well. Okay, so judging by the squeeze out, it looks like I've got good contact everywhere. Great. Yeah, and there's the top side, looks pretty nice. So the clamping cauls work really well for panels that are well behaved. So for panels which, when you lay them side by side, don't have a twist to them as a group. But you're not guaranteed that. So for instances where you need to press the panel flat, you'll need a flat reference. So that's where this thing comes in. So this is a fairly small section of plywood. It's 2 half-inch pieces glued together to oppose a bit of a bend that they had. And then after that, I primed it and took a hand plane to it to just make sure that the surface was as flat as possible. And so with this, I'll be able to use the clamping cauls not as pairs, but as 4 individual pieces. So the idea is to have a flat reference for one side of the panel and then use the clamping cauls on top for the other side of the panel. Now, in making this thing, I prepared it with through holes for 4 panels, because for 4 cleats rather. So the clamping cleats themselves can be used as pairs individually, or against this flat reference they can be used singly, and that means I can put up as many as 4 of them. Now different panels that you want to put together are going to have different dimensions. So one possibility is to put an array of holes here for every possible combination that might come up. But what I chose to do instead is to just put in pairs for the end points of the cleats that I have as a starting point. And then as I encounter every new panel that needs to be put together, add holes specifically for that one. So as an example, I have this leftover pair of matched pieces that I'd like to glue together. And so for that I don't need the entire area. What I did was figure out where I would need holes just for this panel. So I would need holes here and here, and here and here. So I added a line for the whole panel, for the whole cleat, and I'll put it together like this. And then similarly, if I have another panel, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit wider, I'll just bore some more holes to accommodate it. So that takes the drudgery out of putting in a complete array for every possible panel that could possibly come up. And now we're going to get a healthy coat or 2 of paste wax so that glue doesn't stick to this flat reference. So before closing, let me just mention what these red and green things are. I have a 3D printer, and so I'm always making small contraptions that amuse me, basically. This one can be replaced with a regular wing nut. And on the other end, I have a special contraption here that accepts the carriage bolt, but you don't need anything for the carriage bolt head. If you make a round hole, the little square end of the carriage bolt will seat itself and keep itself from turning. So don't worry about what these little plastic things are. So that is it for me for today. If you get a chance, indulge your passion, and if you can share it, even better.